Hi again, everybody. Welcome to the Restoring the Soul podcast. I'm Michael, and today a very special guest. Let me say that he is a legend. It's Dr. Gary Chapman, who's the author of the book that people know as The 5 Love Languages, which has sold over 20 million copies in all of its form, 50 languages around the world. And Dr. Chapman, I just want to welcome you.
Well, thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be with you today.
I'm glad that you're here for so many reasons, because I have known of the 5 love languages both personally and professionally, and I'll start with a backhanded compliment. As a therapist that has worked with trauma people, I've been intrigued by the 5 love languages, found them helpful in my own life, but had this sense that this really doesn't work for people with trauma and for people who have issues of actually being able to receive the love language. So I was thrilled when a copy of the new book came across my desk and the research that you integrated with your co-authors, Dr. Les Parrott and Dr. Leslie Parrott. And the book is called The Love Language That Matters the Most. So let's start with this. What is the love language that matters the most, and why is that important?
Well, we assume that when people see that title, they're going to be asking themselves, which one is it? Which one is it?
Right.
In the first paragraph of the book, we say, the love language that matters most is the love language of your partner. And the reason we do that is a lot of people have read the original book and they're thinking about themselves. They'll take the quiz and they'll discuss it with each other, and they'll try speaking their spouse's language. And then about 3 weeks, they say to me or somebody else, I'm speaking, this is not working. I'm speaking their language. They're not speaking my language, So we're trying to say, let's start. The Bible says we should start with the other person. Love stimulates love. So you be the one that stimulates, that starts it. So great.
So let me ask you this. We talked a little bit about this right before we started. You let me know, I guess, that you were in your 80s. You're 88 years old, and you look and sound and have the vitality of somebody much younger. So I'm in awe of the fact that you're 88 and still so prolific, not because you don't have anything else to do, but because you've got so much to say. So first of all, thank you for continuing to give and to write. You've been married over 60 years. What's the number one thing that you've learned personally that makes a marriage a good marriage where two people actually have sustained joy of being together?
Well, I'll tell you what it was for me in my own marriage, in the early struggles we had in the early days of our marriage. And I came to the point where I finally said to God, I don't know what to do. This is not working. She won't listen to me, which shows you where I was coming from. And it's not working, and I don't know what to do. And as soon as I said that, there came to my mind a visual image of Jesus on his knees, washing the feet of his disciples. And I heard God say to me, that's the problem in your marriage. You do not have the attitude of Christ towards your wife. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because I remember what Jesus said when he stood up. He said to his disciples, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. But he went on to explain, in my kingdom, the leader serves. I want you to serve others the way I've served you. And I knew that was not my attitude. So after I wept and confessed, I asked God to give me the attitude of Christ toward my wife. And in retrospect, that's the greatest prayer I ever prayed about my marriage, because God changed my heart. And 3 questions made it practical when I started asking these questions. Simple questions. First question is, honey, what can I do to help you? Second question, how can I make your life easier? And the third question, how could I be a better husband? And when I was willing to ask those questions, my wife was willing to answer them. Now, looking back on all of that, because I started doing those things, looking back on all of that, I knew nothing about love languages, of course. She was telling me, her answers were telling me her love language, and I was choosing to speak her love language. So to me, that was the turning point. And I think, Philippians chapter 2 says, let this attitude be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. Though he was God, he didn't demand his rights. stepped down in humility and got on level ground with us. And then he stepped down further, even to death on a cross. If we get the right attitude, then, the love languages are going to help us as long as a lot of other things are going to help us if we have the right attitude.
Thank you so much for going there and for sharing that, because that really is what the languages are working toward, right? Being able to be that person that our partner can experience that love from. So in the new book, The Love Language That Matters Most, here's one of the big ideas that it discusses, and the research addresses this idea of why some people can share their love language and a couple can know each other's languages, but if somehow falls flat, it doesn't land. So talk about some of the reasons that the book goes into for why that's the case.
Well, I think one reason is that we are self-centered and we are speaking their language, so they will speak our language. And I've had people say to me, just as I mentioned earlier, I've done this for 3 weeks and it's not working because they're not speaking my language. And I said, oh, so you're speaking their language, so they will speak your language. That's called manipulation. That doesn't work. And so I think that's one reason. I think another reason is because there are a lot of other things in the relationship that they've never dealt with. And consequently, this one little change is not going to deal with those things. So we have to deal with whatever the history is, whatever hurts that are still, raw and not been healed, and those kind of things. But I think once you begin to deal with those things as well, you're going to find if both of you choosing to express each other's love in the right language, you're going to find it's going to make a huge difference.
The other thing that I really appreciated in the new book is looking at how personality affects how people experience love languages.
Yeah.
And also just one quick touch point off what you just said, that self-centeredness doesn't always look obvious. As a husband that's been married going on 35 years, I can personally be so externally looking like I'm doing the right thing, but then on the inside, this is all about me. It's like, so you nailed it when you said, I'm giving you your love language so that you'll give me mine. And that's so subtle, but I really appreciate that. And I guess that addresses an aspect of my personality. So what are the findings around personality and how people do or don't experience their love language?
Well, this is one of the questions people have asked me through the years about the original book. They said, you mentioned in there that personality interfaces with how and when you speak the love language, but you didn't really develop that. And so in this book, that's one of the things we're trying to do. But let's just take introversion and extroversion, for example. So this wife knows that her husband's 30th birthday is coming up. So she plans for that. It's going to be a big one. And so she says to him that evening, I'm going to drive the car because I'm going to surprise you where I'm going to take you. He thinks they're going out to dinner. He's excited. Well, in a while, they pull up in front of the house that he's familiar with. It's a friend's house. He said, what are we doing here? She said, well, they wanted us to stop by. And so they walk in, and there's 30 people there to celebrate his birthday. He is an introvert. Now, he's going to be fine. He's going to laugh and smile. He's going to be friendly to the people and all of that. But in his heart of hearts, he would much have preferred that she take him out to a nice restaurant and celebrate his birthday. If she had taken his personality into account, she was doing a good thing. In her mind, she was loving him by doing an act of service to him. But she didn't take into account that he's an introvert, and that he doesn't feel comfortable being the focus of attention in front of a lot of other people. So that's just an example of how personality interfaces with when and where and how we speak a person's love language.
You talk a lot about empathy and the role of listening and how if those ingredients are not there, that things can potentially fall flat. Talk a little bit about empathy. This has entered so much more of mainstream conversation, even outside of counseling offices. Describe in your language what empathy is. And I think there were 4 F's in the book of fluent, faltering, frustrated, and frozen in regard to empathy. Unpack that.
Yeah, I think empathy is listening with a view to understanding what the other person is thinking and what the other person is feeling. That is, we're trying to see the world through their eyes. And we don't do this by nature. By nature, they share something, and then we give a response. But if we listen, we're going to be asking questions. They share something, and we're going to say, "Now, what I hear you saying is, am I right?" Are they going to say something else? And you're going to say, "Okay, tell me a little bit more about that, because I really want to understand what you're thinking and what you're feeling." We're listening with a view to understanding their perspective, seeing the world through their eyes, rather than responding and giving an answer to what they say. The husband comes home and says, "I'm quitting my job." And the wife says, "Quitting your job? You can't quit your job, blah, 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 blah." But if she would have said, "Honey, tell me what you're thinking. What brings you to say that?" And then he describes, a whole bunch of things that happened today and all. And she asked more questions. And she said, "Well, I can see why quitting ran through your mind, babe." He said, "Well, I'm not going to quit my job. I was just frustrated." Well, she listened long enough that she could understand where he was coming from rather than just responding to what she thought he meant by what he said. So I think that's so important. And we can either be good listeners and fluent in this thing, or we can flounder in this thing. So, but we have to have the concept first of what empathy means and what we're really trying to do.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What if healing didn't have to take years? Hey friends, it's Michael. At Restoring the Soul, we guide men, women, and couples through intensive counseling that brings deep transformation, often in just a few weeks. And our mission is fueled by generous people like you. Now you can become a monthly partner by setting up a recurring donation of any amount. If you give $20 or more on a monthly basis, I'll send you a signed copy of my book, Sacred Attachment. To set up a monthly gift, visit restoringthesoul.com and click Donate. Make sure in the notes section to type the word book. Thanks for helping to restore lives. And in terms of fluency, that first F, I love the language idea of a dialect. So there's the 5 love languages, but there's almost a countless number of dialects. Like in India, for example, a dear friend who's Indian from South Asia told me that where he came from, there were 1,500 dialects. And I was like, how do you even function from village to village there? So can you unpack and do this however feels comfortable and efficient to you? But I'd love to hear about, for each of the languages, what are the key dialect aspects?
Yeah. Well, this is another question that people have asked me through the years that motivated me to write this book with Les and Leslie Parrott. They've said, Dr. Chapman, in the original book, you mentioned that these languages have dialects, but you don't really tell us what they are.
Mm.
And so this is a big thing in this book, is dealing with the dialects of these languages. For example, words of affirmation. The 3 dialects that we mentioned were encouragement, words of encouragement, and words of compliment, and then words of affirmation. Those are different. They're same language, but encouragement is focusing on something maybe you observed about them, that they're doing well, like a man says to his wife, "Honey, you're a good writer. I was reading something you wrote the other day. You ought to write an article. I think we could put it in the paper. I mean, it's good." Well, he's speaking encouragement, but to her, if that's not her dialect, it may come along as pressure. He's kind of pushing me to do something I don't want to do. And then affirmation is basically, or appreciation is basically expressing appreciation for something they have done. "Honey, this meal was wonderful. I really appreciate what you did, And then simply also giving words that communicate something positive about them. One of the things I like about you is your personality. You're so positive. I love that about you. I run into people all the time and everything's negative. But for you, you always see the positive in things. So, so just understanding the dialects of the language is going to help you be more effective in communicating. And of course, as you know, the book also recommends an online quiz we call the premium quiz, or the premium assessment, that will actually show you the primary, not only the primary love language, but the dialect within that language that's most important and the one that's secondary importance. And so understanding, the dialect of each of these languages is going to help you be more effective. And I think folks are going to really, and we spell all these out in the book, of course, even without the premium quiz. And I think seeing those and recognizing those, and some of them you're just going to know right away when you read it. You go, oh man, that's me. Like quality time, for example. Quality time is giving the person your undivided attention. So this husband knows that his wife's language is quality time. So Friday night, he says to her, honey, how about tomorrow morning, you and I get up early and let's go up to Pilot Mountain and let's take a hike. It's all morning we'll spend together. He thinks he's hitting a home run. She says to him, honey, I've got Saturday already planned. Oh, you can put those off till next Saturday, honey. You see, he is an improviser. At the moment, just quality time, that'd be great. She's a planner. She wants to do what he's saying, but let's put it on the calendar for 2 weeks from now. And if he understood the difference between those, but he's operating on his own perception, this is it. Let's do it. You have to plan it ahead for her. And learning these aspects of the dialects, I think is going to help a lot of people. They're going to see themselves, I think, as they read the book.
And what I'm hearing from you, just with those two examples, with those two love languages, not just that it falls flat, but that it can actually backfire if it arouses pressure or anxiety, or it throws the wife's schedule where he thinks that he's helping and it's actually hurting. And that's actually different from, well, it's just falling flat.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And like on gift giving, there are fanciful gifts, like diamonds or rings or jewelry or something like that. There are functional gifts, like a vacuum cleaner, or other things. And then there's sentimental gifts, like a photo that you made of some scene and you had it put in a what do you call them? frame and give it to her, and she's going, oh man, that is so neat, So understanding the difference between those. Now, I remember one young man, hadn't been married very long. It was their first Valentine's Day, and he knew her language was gifts. So he bought her a really nice food mixer. I mean, top of the line, and gave it to her on Valentine's Day. And he thought, man, she's going to love this. Well, she did appreciate it, and she was nice. She thanked him and all. But really what she wanted was a sentimental gift. She wanted something like flowers, or she wanted a special note on Valentine's Day. Just very, very different in one of them speaking to her into her dialect. So, again, if he had understood the difference and understood what her dialect was, he would have known that's okay to give her, but not on Valentine's Day,
Yeah. And to your point, back about our self-centeredness, the premium assessment, which, by the way, can be found at 5lovelanguages.com. That's the number 5, lovelanguages.com. That can give clarity, but it also comes back to I need to be outside of myself and listening and attuned and dialed in so that I am not completely clueless, because a lot of husbands, and I know we're talking about husbands a lot, but might be saying, well, I've tried to do the right thing, but the listening, the assessment, those kinds of sense of deep understanding might lead to being able to speak the dialect of that given moment.
Yeah, and I think that's why this book is going to be so helpful to people who have already read the first book. I encourage people to read the first book first, then read this book, and you're going to find it's just going to take it much deeper, make you much more effective in doing what you're trying to do. And that is keep their love tank full, meeting the emotional need. Almost everybody agrees. One of our deepest emotional needs on the human level is the need to feel loved by the significant people in our lives. And so if we understand that and we choose, this is back to attitude, and we choose a loving attitude, this gives us information on how to meet that need in a very, very effective manner.
How about the dialect for acts of service and then physical touch?
Well, physical touch, there's a whole bunch of them. There's about 10 of them, I think. They're playful touches, where you're tickling the person or throwing a pillow at them or something like that. They're romantic touches, which are, kind of leading up to having a very romantic evening. There's a whole string of those. I teamed up with Les and Leslie Parrott, as you know. He's a psychologist and she's a marriage and family counselor. And he was really good on all these dialects. Here's some of the others. There's a protective touch. When things you're outside and there's a bunch of people around, and you sense something's not going right. You touch them in a way to protect them. There's a restoring touch when there's been a little fallout or something. Touch that person, that kind of touch. There's a comforting touch when your spouse gets off the phone and they start crying, and you say, "Honey, what's wrong?" And they say, "I just heard that my brother died." And physical touch, you go over and give them an embrace. It's a comforting touch. So understanding the different dialects of touch will help you know when to touch and how to touch, and also why one kind of touch is more meaningful to them than the other kind of touch.
And what about acts of service? I think that's the last one.
Acts of service. One of them is a service that will save them time because their schedule is really full, and you do something for them, like going and standing in line somewhere to get something that oh man, that's such a wonderful thing, honey. I so appreciate you doing that. So it's saving time. Another is alleviating stress. That that there's stress because there's a bunch of people coming over for dinner, and so you're just, "Okay, honey, what can I do to help you now?" Because they're under a lot of stress. And then there's also instilling security to them in a sense that things are something's going on they're kind of threatening them. And so you're going to say, "Honey, look, I put double locks on the doors. So it's going to be a lot safer here now. I just want you to know that." Okay? It's something, it would be meaningful to anybody else, but for them, if this is their dialect, man, that sort of thing speaks very, very loudly to them. Mm-hmm. So again, understanding, how and when the personality and the dialects interface with each other is going to help people accomplish the goal of meeting that person's need for love. But I would like to come back to this, Michael. The foundation of all of this is having an attitude of love. Because love starts with an attitude. And the attitude of love is, I choose to enrich your life. I want to do whatever I can do that will help you become the person that you believe God wants you to be. That's the attitude of love. And that's the attitude we're called upon to have. And as Christians, we have outside help because the scriptures say the love of God is poured in our hearts by the Holy Spirit. So we may not have positive feelings. Maybe we're in a troubled marriage. Maybe we've lost those positive feelings. We may have negative feelings. But we can say to God, "You know what I'm married to, and you know I don't have positive feelings for them. But I'm married to them, and I'm opening my heart to you. You pour your love into my heart, and I'll be your agent for expressing your love to them." And you have all the help of God to speak their love language, even though you don't have warm love feelings for them. And love stimulates love. I can't guarantee you if you'll do that on a regular basis for a few months. I can't guarantee you that they'll begin to warm up to you, but I can tell you it's the most powerful thing you could do to influence them. The fact is, we influence each other every single day, either negative influence or positive influence. And many times when we don't have the love feelings, we give negative influence. We criticize them because they're not doing this or not doing that. And that is a negative influence. That just pushes them further away. But when you're loving them, even though you don't have love feelings for them, you're having a positive influence on them. Scriptures say we love God because he first loved us. So we apply that in the human relationship. We're going to be having the most positive influence we can have on our spouse.
That is so powerful. We are right at the mark to finish. And so I want to thank you, Dr. Gary Chapman, for your decades-long work around helping couples and helping relationships, helping marriages. Your new book is The Love Language That Matters Most: How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. God bless you, to you and to the Parrots, as you continue this very important ministry.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's good to be with you, and I appreciate what you're doing. So keep on keeping on. God bless you.
So we've wrapped up another episode of Restoring the Soul. We want you to know that Restoring the Soul is so much more than a podcast. In fact, the heart of what we have done for nearly 20 years is intensive counseling. When you can't wait months or years to get out of the rut you're in, our intensive counseling programs in Colorado allow you to experience deep change in half-day blocks over 2 weeks. To learn more, visit restoringthesoul.com. That's restoringthesoul.com.